health and a little wealth and a lot of love.
And it's all about perception too, I think.
It is perception.
I mean, obviously, like many other couples, we argue about finances,
We do.
even though we are blessed to not be in a situation where we can't put food on the table or we can't
That's true.
pay our bills right now. So it hits close to home, and the way that we differ, I guess, whenever we think about things, and it comes kind of back to those gender roles, is that a lot of times women are by default expected to take care of the household and
Like
expected
caregivers,
to cook the meals and to clean the house and to take care of the babies, whether that's fur babies or real babies. But, you know, I definitely take on those roles as a part of our household.
You do.
And it's just a hard situation to be in, especially when you're used to being such a high earner.
Yeah.
And
I can imagine, like, I didn't even think about that. So the psychology around money for this, Mind and Money Matters for you, is you went from a very strong salary to cut it in half, less than half.
but working more, making less than half, but working more than half. Yeah.
And then going to zero. So I never thought about that. I never thought about what does that do to you from a psychological standpoint, especially since you spent all this time training for something. And then when you got out, it wasn't what you expected. And so I'm looking in the camera, I'm looking at Karen, and I'm pretty much saying that we're going to find something and we're going to do it better than insurance-based and anything else that is defined for us. We're going to make our own rules.
And I know we're kind of going off topic or
It's
going
Mind
on
and Money Matters.
I know,
We're
but
not.
going on a tangent, but that's the other part about a relationship, is that sometimes one person will take over the stress of the finances while the other maybe takes over other responsibilities that maybe they weren't doing before, to pivot and get to a position where you're living in harmony again, where you're both
I agree with that.
emotionally in a good place, you're both physically in a good place, and it's all about partnership and the
is
give
about
and take.
partnership.
You might have one person who's giving more at one point in your relationship than the other, but
Right.
it's important that there's that balance. Like, you can't obviously have that one-sided, one person's a giver the entire time, the other person's a taker. Obviously,
right.
that's not going to be something that's sustainable. But I
Right.
think it's good to
There should be a timeline and
Yeah.
boundaries.
and discussion. You know,
It is a discussion.
being open about that and knowing that there is a plan, or there's
And there is a plan with
There
us.
is.
And that's what I'm not elaborating on. I'm talking about like what our challenges are. There is a plan, right? There's a plan that we're focused on that you agreed to do. This is one of them. Which
you play to your skill sets. You play to
Yeah.
your strengths.
Yeah, and I would say this: Emily has more job security than I do, and so one day when AI replaces all of our jobs, I am an AI enthusiast. Healthcare, what Emily does, I might be dependent on her. So we have a lot of faith in what the future looks like for us, and
Trying to enjoy the journey.
we are trying. That's one thing that I talked to my mom about on Friday, was making sure you enjoy the journey. So anyway, so we talked about some of these other aspects, and then there's some cultural differences too when it comes to Mind and Money Matters. So the American dream for us, we do worship material things. We have a lot of luxuries here. It was a funny conversation I was having with my intern who's from Colombia, and his grandmother was visiting him over here. And his mom was like, Alexa, do this. And Alexa was responding and giving all the answers, all the questions, or ordering whatever. And the grandmother was like, oh my God. But that's not common. But the thing is, I don't think people are any happier in America than they are in other countries.
It's probably the opposite. People are probably
I agree.
happier in other countries.
Right. And Japan's the same way. The highest death rate is in Japan, and they call it the dead pigeon, where they work so hard they just drop dead which sounds terrible, but that's really the thing. So we talked about money matters, but let's get some stats. I'm a big stats person. So 3 of 5 Americans have put off marriage because of debt. 54% believe having a partner with insurmountable debt was a major reason for divorce. And when Emily and I were talking about this episode, she didn't see this material. Her eyes went like this. So it is important for us to talk about. And this is the interesting topic too. So we talk about finances and sex being the number one reasons why people are getting divorced. But there's also something called financial infidelity. What do you think that is?
So the secrecy of, I guess, spending money without telling your spouse, trying to hide expenses from your significant other.
Now here's stats. 31% of people are spending money and not telling their spouse. 28% are hiding debt from their spouse. And what's worse is 22% are dishonest about their income. I don't know about you guys, but newsflash, no wonder finances are the number one reason why couples are getting divorced in America. It all comes to become transparency, you know? Trust and transparency.
Yeah.
It is. I know it's hard out there. And again, we try not to be doomsday. There's enough of that on the TV. We can talk about how the rising cost of food, gas, inflation, no one can afford a house, all of that. But at the end of the day, let's put that aside. You got to be transparent with your partner. You got to sit there and sit down and say, hey, here's what's going on.
Honest, truthful, honesty is key.
Yeah. And if you don't want to do it weekly, do it monthly and say, this is where we are financially, guys. So that concludes what I.
With a little health and a little wealth and a lot of love. That's the life that we live.